So we're standing by now with engineer Henry Ikem Obi, the general manager of downstream for the NNPC. You're welcome to the program, sir.
Thanks for having me on the program.
Well, you know, the issue to discuss is clearly that of the fuel scarcity taking place around the country. And, you know, yesterday we heard from the GMD of NNPC, Dr. Maikanti Baru, about some of the measures being taken by the federal government to ease this difficulty. Now, I want to ask you, in view of some of the assurances that have been given, why should Nigerians believe that the assurances given yesterday will be any more true than those given in past weeks that it would end shortly?
NNPC is fully committed to, resolving the current situation. And just as the Group Managing Director, Dr. Maikanti Baru, had said yesterday in his address to the press, we regret the current situation. NNPC had made all the necessary arrangements to ensure that we had a similar experience with what the citizenry had last year. Unfortunately, for the factors, the purported increase, the rumors around the price increase, which led to panic buying of PMS, of course, the hoarding and diversion. People panicked, and we saw the demand numbers almost double.
Now, when we kind of take into account the fact that traditionally our consumption is hovering between 27 and 28 million liters per day, now we're going over 50. What I want to ask you is, clearly with all this fuel coming in, almost double our consumption rate, we've heard that there are fuel products being bought at a subsidized rate and being diverted across the border to other countries for resale for profit. Now, what measures are being taken to stop that?
NNPC is working with the security agencies, the customs and the DSS and the rest of them, to ensure that those activities are eliminated, that diversion and cross-border smuggling is totally eliminated. Mr. President has been extremely supportive. So NNPC at the moment is providing all the operating information that these agencies need to ensure that they're effective.
My understanding is at the moment the Kaduna refinery and the Port Harcourt refinery are contributing about 4 million liters per day?
Yeah, Port Harcourt is doing 2.8 billion liters of PMS every day, and Kaduna refinery is doing just under 800,000 liters of PMS as well.
And what about the Wari refinery?
Wari refinery, we're expecting it to come on stream very soon. At the moment, it's going through some maintenance work.
Okay, now, we're going to take a short break. Just stay with us. We'll be back in a moment.
Thank you.
By with us is engineer Henry Ikem Obi, the Chief Operating Officer of Downstream for the NNPC. Sir, as we continue the conversation, I want to go straight to one of the headlines this morning. On This Day newspaper, they quoted the current level of subsidy at 40.70 kobo per liter. And we've heard from Dr. Maikanti Baru, the GMD of NNPC, yesterday saying that that subsidy is actually 26 naira per liter. We're trying to understand, why is there a discrepancy?
Well, I think we'll stand by the GMD's computations because this is NNPC's experience. This is based on our transactions, our supply arrangements, and the volumes we bring into the Nigerian market. PPPRA, of course, is the right agency to advise those numbers for an open market, situation. But as the GMD had reiterated yesterday, that his numbers were based on PPMC's experience or NNPC's import experience.
Engineer, according to the GMD, the landing cost right now per liter is 171 naira. We're selling at 145. The discrepancy of the gap being 26 naira. Now, if we know that 26 naira per liter is being paid by the federal government as subsidy, then if we calculate that with the 50 million, approximately 50 million liters that we're consuming every day, we're looking at a subsidy of approximately 1.3 billion naira every single day. How sustainable is this, and how long will the federal government be willing to step in on behalf of the Nigerian people?
I think the first thing we have to recognize that energy security is extremely important for the nation, be it from a socio-economic standpoint or from a security perspective. So that's priority number one, ensuring that we get all the volumes and economic activities are not grounded because of the lack of fuels. In terms of how long this would go on for, government at the right time, I know that government is looking at it, government is thinking about it, and at the right time, government will take the decisions that are necessary. If at that point government considers this as a non-sustainable situation. But we must always remember that PMS, which is petrol, accounts for over 60% of the fuels we consume in Nigeria, which is why it's extremely important that even if we ultimately transition from today's situation to what most people would say a deregulated environment where people can price petrol at the pump as they wish. It has to be a painstaking journey. It has to be a carefully thought out plan before that can happen. So it's not something that you can implement overnight.
According to the GMD yesterday, he said that the trucking, the truck out rate has now doubled. That before we were looking at approximately 750 or 850 trucks of fuel per day going out, and now we're looking at 1,500. Now, if the issue is about supply, then how much of an issue is price manipulation by the marketers? Because when you talk to some of the motorists around the country, they will tell you that they see people, or they see the marketers with fuel in their stations, but they're just unwilling to sell. What are your thoughts about that, and what's being done to actually check that? Other than some of the reports we've heard about maybe DPR investigating, what can you tell us about that?
Well, DPR is the main enforcer, of those regulations. So DPR has a responsibility to actually go to every single site across the country to ensure that any volumes or any product stored on the ground is dispensed to the public at the right price. We're also working very closely with the NSCDC, which is a civil defense group, who are also empowered by the Constitution to engage in similar activities and in fact prosecute erring marketers or violators. Yeah.
Engineer, would you say that the sanctions regime is enough, though? Because right now, this is something that has been going on for well over a decade, 2 decades, What can be done to show these marketers that, look, if you're going to engage in price manipulation, we, for example, will permanently revoke your operation? Right now, all we hear are these little fines. What do you have to say about that?
Oh, that's ultimately, for a repeat offender, for instance, the DPR has to make a call, ultimately, whether this is the right time to withdraw the license, to revoke the license of this marketer or this retail site. But one of the challenges we've had historically is that of enforcement. So it's not just about the laws that govern the situation, but also when regulators go out, that they actually implement the sanctions. And I think we've seen a new DPR. We've seen a lot of that happening now. So the message is going out to the marketers. But ultimately, NNPC's focus and goal is to ensure that we bridge, the supply-demand imbalance that has led to this panic buying, and which is why the GMD was saying that we've almost doubled the truck out from the depots, so that when people see that every single service station is selling fuel, then those who are hoarding and those who are diverting would be discouraged. It would ultimately normalize the operations and sell at the right price.
Engineer, please stand by. We're going to throw it over to Lagos, where Gimba is standing by. Gimba?